In a galaxy far away, on the planet Zorith, there was a human student named Jake. He was excited to study at the Zorith Academy, known for its advanced knowledge and diverse students. Jake wanted to learn about aliens, their cultures, and how to work with them. But there was one problem. Jake was struggling in his alien studies class. The class was taught by Professor Zila, a green-skinned alien with bright yellow eyes. She was famous for her strict teaching style and high expectations. Many students were scared of her. She often said, "Knowledge is power. If you want to succeed, you must work hard." Jake knew she was right, but he found the class very hard. One day, Jake sat in the back of the classroom, feeling nervous. His classmates were busy taking notes and listening to Professor Zila as she explained alien customs. She spoke quickly, and Jake struggled to keep up. He looked around and saw that everyone else seemed to understand. He felt out of place. As Professor Zila wrote on the blackboard, she suddenly stopped and turned to the class. "I will be giving an important exam next week," she announced. "This exam will cover everything we have learned this semester. You must study hard to pass." Jake's heart sank. He thought about how he had barely managed to understand the last lesson. "How will I ever pass this exam?" he thought. He could see his future slipping away. If he failed, he might have to leave the academy and go back home. After class, Jake packed his things slowly. He heard his classmates laughing and talking about their plans for the exam. "I'll study all night," said one student. Another added, "I'll ask Professor Zila for extra help." Jake felt alone and worried. He wanted to ask for help, but he was too embarrassed. As Jake walked out of the classroom, he saw Professor Zila standing by her desk. She was grading papers and did not look up. Jake hesitated. Should I talk to her? He wondered. He took a deep breath and decided to approach her. Professor Zila, he said quietly. She looked up, her yellow eyes piercing through him. "Yes, Jake. Do you need something?" she asked, her voice firm. Jake felt a lump in his throat. I am worried about the exam. I don't think I will pass," he admitted. Professor Zila raised an eyebrow. "Why do you think that?" she asked. "Have you been studying?" Jake nodded, but he felt ashamed. "I try, but I don't understand everything. It's hard for me," he replied. The professor sighed. "If you want to succeed, you must put in the effort. I will not give you an easy way out, but I can help you," she said. "Meet me tomorrow after class. We will work on your weaknesses." Jake was surprised. He had expected her to be angry or dismissive, but she seemed willing to help. "Thank you, Professor," he said, feeling a spark of hope. The next day, after class, Jake waited nervously by the professor's desk. When the classroom emptied, Professor Zila looked at him. "Are you ready to work hard?" she asked. "Yes, I am," Jake replied, determined to prove himself. They sat down together, and the professor started explaining the material again. She was patient and used examples that made more sense to Jake. He felt the tension in his shoulders ease as she explained different alien cultures in a way that he could understand. As they worked together, Jake started to enjoy the subject more. He learned about the Zorethians and their colorful celebrations. He discovered that aliens had different ways of expressing emotions, which fascinated him. The professor made funny comments about her own experiences with humans, which made Jake laugh. "Not all aliens are serious, you know," she said, chuckling. "We have our silly moments too." Jake realized that Professor Zila was not just a strict teacher. She had a fun side as well. As the days went by, Jake attended their study sessions with enthusiasm. Each time, he learned something new. The professor would give him small tasks to complete, and with her help, he began to understand the material better. Jake felt his confidence growing, but the other students noticed that Jake was spending more time with Professor Zila. They whispered and stared. Some even laughed at him. "Look at Jake. He's trying to be the teacher's pet," one student snickered. Jake felt embarrassed, but he tried to ignore them. After another study session, Jake thanked the professor. "I feel like I'm really starting to understand," he said, beaming. "Good," Professor Zilla replied with a rare smile. "You have the potential to do well, Jake. Just keep working hard." As Jake walked out of the classroom, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He was no longer just a scared student. He was learning, growing, and building a relationship with his professor. He knew he still had a long way to go before the exam, but for the first time, he felt hopeful. Little did he know that this journey with Professor Zilla would lead to even more surprises and challenges. A surprising request. The week passed quickly, and the day of the exam was getting closer. Jake felt both excited and nervous. His study sessions with Professor Zilla helped him understand the material better, but he still had doubts. He wanted to prove himself, but what if he failed? On the day before the exam, Jake entered the classroom, and a strange feeling filled the air. The other students were buzzing with energy, discussing their last-minute study plans. Jake sat at his desk, trying to focus, but he could feel the tension in his stomach. He glanced at Professor Zilla, who was grading papers at her desk. She looked serious as always. After class ended, Jake gathered his things slowly. He wanted to ask the professor for more help but felt unsure. Suddenly, he heard her call his name. "Jake, come here," she said. Jake's heart raced. What does she want? He thought as he approached her desk. The other students were watching him, their whispers floating through the room. Yes, Professor," Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've been observing your progress," she began. "You've improved, but I think you can do even better. I have a proposal for you." Jake's eyes widened. "A proposal?" he repeated, curious yet nervous. "Yes," Professor Zilla replied, leaning closer. "I need your help with a special project. If you agree, it will give you extra credit and help you pass my class, but it will require hard work and dedication." Jake was taken aback. "What kind of project?" he asked. "I need to study human behavior and emotions in a real-life setting. You are a human, and you can help me understand your species better," she explained. Jake felt a mix of excitement and fear. "But why me?" "There are other students who can help," he said. Professor Zilla shook her head. "I want someone who is willing to learn and improve. You have shown that you want to understand, and I believe you can do this." Jake thought for a moment. This could be his chance to prove himself. "Okay, I'll help you," he said, feeling determined. "Excellent. We will start right away," Professor Zilla said, her yellow eyes sparkling with excitement. "Meet me after school in the lab." The lab was a strange place, filled with unusual gadgets and bright lights. When Jake arrived, he was amazed by the sight. There were machines that looked like they could do anything from measuring emotions to recording thoughts. Professor Zilla was busy setting up the equipment. "Welcome, Jake," she said, gesturing for him to come closer. "Today, we will begin by exploring how humans express their emotions. I want you to show me what makes you happy." Jake scratched his head, unsure of what to do. "Oh, well, I like music and playing games," he said. "Perfect. Let's start with music," she said, smiling. "Play me a song that makes you happy." Jake pulled out his tablet and played a cheerful tune. As the music filled the room, he felt his spirits lift. He began to dance a little, lost in the rhythm. To his surprise, Professor Zilla joined him, her movements a bit awkward but filled with enthusiasm. "See, we can both enjoy this," she said, laughing. Jake couldn't help but smile. It felt good to share a part of his culture with her. After the music stopped, Professor Zilla asked, "What else makes you happy?" "Spending time with friends and family," Jake replied. "We often go to the park or have barbecues together." "I see. Humans value relationships a lot," she noted, writing in her notebook. "That is important for my research." As the afternoon went on, they explored different emotions together. Jake shared stories about his childhood, his favorite memories, and even what made him sad. Professor Zilla listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. "This is fascinating," she said. "Your emotions are complex, yet beautiful. I want to learn more." Jake felt proud. He never thought his feelings could be so interesting to someone else. He was no longer just a struggling student. He was an important part of a special project. After their session, Jake was exhausted but happy. He felt like he was making a difference. "Thank you, Professor Zilla," he said as they finished up. "I didn't know talking about my feelings could be so fun." Professor Zilla smiled warmly. "Thank you for your honesty, Jake. You are doing well. This project will not only help you, but also teach me about humans." As Jake left the lab, he felt a new sense of purpose. He was excited about the project and the chance to learn more about himself and his feelings. The thought of the upcoming exam faded from his mind. He felt confident and ready to face whatever came next. Little did Jake know that the project would lead to even more surprises and challenges, testing his understanding of himself and his relationship with Professor Zilla. Learning together. The days turned into weeks as Jake and Professor Zilla worked together on the special project. Each session brought new discoveries and surprises. Jake felt more confident every day, and he looked forward to his time with the professor. She made learning exciting and fun. One afternoon, Jake arrived at the lab with a big smile on his face. "Professor Zilla, I found a great video about human emotions. It shows how we express happiness in different ways," he said, pulling out his tablet. "Excellent, Jake. Let's watch it together," she replied, her yellow eyes bright with interest. They sat down, and Jake played the video. It showed humans laughing, dancing, and enjoying life. As they watched, Professor Zilla took notes. "This is wonderful. Humans seem to have many ways to express happiness," she said. "I want to understand this better. Can you show me how you express happiness in real life?" Jake thought for a moment. "Sure. We can have a little celebration," he suggested. "How about we make some human food and listen to music? That's a great way to feel happy." Professor Zilla's eyes widened with excitement. "I would love to try human food. What should we make?" "Let's make pizza," Jake exclaimed. "It's one of my favorite foods, and it's easy to make together." They gathered the ingredients and started working in the lab's kitchen area. Jake showed Professor Zilla how to roll out the dough, spread the sauce, and sprinkle the cheese. "Now we can add toppings. What do you like?" he asked. "Let's add mushrooms and peppers," she replied, looking at the colorful vegetables. "They look interesting." As they worked, they laughed and talked. Professor Zilla shared stories about her life on Zoreth. She explained how her species celebrated their holidays with colorful lights and music. Jake found her stories fascinating. He learned that while they were different, they shared a love for celebration. "Your food smells amazing," Professor Zilla said as the pizza baked in the oven. "I can't wait to taste it." When the pizza was ready, they took it out and let it cool for a few minutes. Jake sliced the pizza and handed a piece to Professor Zilla. "Here you go. This is how we eat pizza," he said, showing her how to hold it. With a big smile, she took a bite. "Mom, this is delicious," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I never knew human food could be so good." Jake felt proud. "I'm glad you like it. Food brings people together, and it makes us happy," he said. They continued to eat and chat, enjoying the moment. The lab was filled with laughter and warmth. After the pizza, they decided to play some music. Jake found a lively song, and they both began to dance. Professor Zilla moved with grace, while Jake danced with energy. They laughed at each other's dancing styles, enjoying the freedom of the moment. "This is wonderful," Professor Zilla said, breathing heavily but smiling. "I can feel the happiness in the air. Thank you for sharing this with me." "Thank you for joining me," Jake replied. "I feel like we're becoming good friends." As their sessions continued, they explored different emotions. One day, they discussed sadness. Jake shared a story about a time he lost a pet. It was hard for me, he said softly. I cried and felt lonely. Professor Zilla listened carefully. That sounds painful, Jake. I understand that humans feel emotions deeply, she said. On my planet, we also feel sadness, but we have different ways to cope. What do you do when you feel sad? Jake asked, curious about her culture. When Zorathians feel sad, we gather with friends and family. We talk about our feelings and support each other. Sometimes we even sing songs to lift our spirits, she explained. Jake thought about this. That sounds nice. Talking helps a lot when you're feeling down. Yes, Professor Zilla agreed. Emotions connect us. Your stories help me understand humans better. I appreciate your openness. As the project progressed, Jake noticed changes in himself. He felt more confident expressing his emotions and discussing difficult topics. He learned how to manage his feelings better. Professor Zilla, too, seemed to grow closer to Jake. They shared more personal stories and connected on a deeper level. One day, as they wrapped up their session, Jake said, I really enjoy our time together. It feels like we're learning from each other. I feel the same way, Jake. You are an excellent teacher, Professor Zilla replied, her smile genuine. I have learned so much about human emotions, and I look forward to our next lessons. As they finished their discussion, Jake couldn't help but feel grateful. Their project was not just about grades. It was about friendship, understanding, and the joy of learning together. He realized that through sharing their emotions and experiences, they were building a bridge between their worlds. Jake left the lab that day with a light heart. He was excited for what was to come. Little did he know that the bond he was forming with Professor Zilla would lead to even greater challenges and discoveries, testing not just their knowledge but also their friendship. Overcoming obstacles. As Jake and Professor Zilla continued their project, they faced new challenges that tested their resolve and friendship. They were excited about what they were learning, but the pressure of the upcoming exam loomed over them. Jake wanted to do well, but sometimes he felt overwhelmed. One day, after an intense study session, Jake sat at his desk, rubbing his temples. He had been struggling to understand the differences between human and Zorathian cultures. Professor Zilla noticed his frustration. Jake, what's wrong? You seem troubled, she said gently. I just don't get it, Jake exclaimed. There are so many details, and I feel like I'm falling behind. What if I fail the exam? Professor Zilla leaned closer, her expression serious. It's normal to feel this way, Jake. Learning about different cultures is not easy, but you must remember, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. Jake took a deep breath. I know, but I'm scared. I don't want to disappoint you or myself, he admitted. Let's break it down, she suggested. Instead of trying to learn everything at once, focus on one aspect at a time. We can work through this together. Feeling a bit better, Jake nodded. Okay, let's try that. The next day, they decided to focus on Zorathian traditions. Professor Zilla explained a major holiday called the Festival of Lights. During this festival, we celebrate life and unity. We light colorful lanterns and share food with friends and family, she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Wow, that sounds beautiful, Jake replied. How do you celebrate? We sing, dance, and tell stories. It's a time of joy and connection, she explained. Jake could see how much this festival meant to her. To help Jake understand, Professor Zilla suggested they create their own celebration. Let's have a mini festival of lights in the lab, she said. We can decorate, make food, and even invite some classmates. Jake's eyes lit up. That sounds fun. I think it will help me learn better if we experience it together. They spent the next few days preparing for their celebration. They made colorful lanterns out of paper and decorated the lab with bright streamers. Jake taught Professor Zilla how to cook a simple human dish, spaghetti. It was a messy but fun experience, and they laughed as they cooked together. On the day of the celebration, Jake and Professor Zilla were excited. They set up the lab with the decorations and arranged the food on the table. They even invited a few classmates to join in the fun. As the students entered the lab, they were surprised. "What's going on here?" one of them asked, looking around in awe. "We are having a mini festival of lights," Jake announced proudly. "Come and celebrate with us." The classmates were curious and eager to join. They helped with the decorations and enjoyed the food. As they ate spaghetti and shared stories, the atmosphere became warm and friendly. Suddenly, one of the students, a girl named Lily, spoke up. "Jake, I didn't know you could cook. This is really good." Jake smiled, feeling proud. "Thanks. Professor Zilla helped me learn how to make it." Professor Zilla chimed in. "And I learned so much about human culture today. Your traditions are beautiful." The classmates started to open up. They shared their own traditions and experiences, and the lab buzzed with laughter and chatter. For the first time, Jake felt a sense of belonging. However, not everyone was kind. A few students snickered and made comments about Jake spending too much time with Professor Zula. "Look at Jake, trying to be the teacher's pet," one boy sneered. Jake's heart sank. He felt the weight of their words, and it made him anxious. Professor Zilla noticed his change in mood. "Jake, don't let them bother you. Focus on what you are learning and how far you've come," she advised. Jake took a deep breath, reminding himself of their hard work. "You're right," he said quietly. He decided to ignore the teasing and enjoy the celebration. As the night went on, the lab filled with laughter and joy. They played games, danced, and sang songs. Jake realized that these moments were what mattered most. He was not just a student, he was part of a community. Later, as they sat together under the lanterns, Professor Zilla turned to Jake. "This was a wonderful idea. You have done well in bringing everyone together," she said. "You should be proud." Jake smiled, feeling a rush of happiness. "Thank you, Professor. I couldn't have done it without your help," he replied. The next day, they returned to their studies. The mini festival of lights had lifted Jake's spirits, and he felt more confident. They continued to work on their project, and Jake's understanding of Zorathian culture grew deeper. But as the exam day approached, Jake knew he needed to stay focused. He pushed himself harder, studying late into the night. However, he started to feel tired and stressed again. On the eve of the exam, Jake walked into the lab, feeling overwhelmed. "Professor Zilla, I don't know if I can do this," he said, his voice shaky. "Jake, remember what we learned," she said gently. "You have overcome obstacles before. You are not alone in this. We will tackle this exam together." Feeling reassured, Jake took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do this," he said with determination. Together, they went over the material one last time, and Jake felt a sense of calm wash over him. He knew he had worked hard, and that was what truly mattered. As they wrapped up, Jake felt grateful for the journey they had shared. They had faced challenges, but together, they had overcome them. With renewed confidence, he was ready to take on whatever came next. Building a bond. The day of the exam finally arrived. Jake woke up early, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. He had studied hard with Professor Zilla and felt prepared, but the thought of the exam still made his stomach twist. He dressed quickly and headed to the academy, determined to do his best. When he arrived, he saw many students gathered outside the classroom, whispering and exchanging nervous glances. Jake joined them, trying to blend in. "Are you ready for the exam?" a classmate asked him. "I think so," Jake replied, though he wasn't entirely sure. He took a deep breath, hoping the confidence he felt during their study sessions would return. As they entered the classroom, Professor Zilla stood at the front, looking calm and composed. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice strong. "Today is the day of your exam. Remember what you have learned. Trust yourselves, and you will do well." Jake felt a bit reassured hearing her words. He sat at his desk and focused on the paper in front of him. The questions were challenging, but he took his time, recalling the information he had studied with Professor Zula. As he worked through the exam, memories of their time together flooded his mind. Cooking, dancing, and celebrating their cultures. After what felt like hours, Jake finally finished the exam. He handed in his paper and stepped outside, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. "I did it," he thought, smiling to himself. He was proud of the effort he had put in. Later that day, Jake found Professor Zilla in the lab, grading exams. He approached her, his heart racing. "Professor, I finished the exam. I really tried my best," he said eagerly. She looked up and smiled. "I'm proud of you, Jake. No matter the result, you have worked hard and grown as a student. That is what matters most," she said. Just then, one of Jake's classmates, Lily, walked in. "Hey, Jake, how do you think you did?" she asked. "I think I did okay," he replied, feeling hopeful. "I'm sure you'll do great," she encouraged, then turned to Professor Zula. "Thank you for helping him. He has really improved." "Thank you, Lily," Professor Zilla said with a smile. "Jake has shown great dedication, and I'm glad to see him succeed." Jake felt a rush of warmth at their words. It felt nice to be recognized for his hard work. As he left the lab, he realized how much he had grown during this experience. He had learned more than just facts. He had built relationships. A few days later, the results were announced. Jake waited nervously as the professor called each student's name. When she finally called his name, he approached her desk, his heart racing. "Congratulations, Jake. You passed with flying colors," she said, handing him his paper. Jake's eyes widened in disbelief. "I passed. Really?" he asked, his voice filled with joy. "Yes. You should be proud of your hard work." "You earned this," Professor Zilla replied, beaming at him. Jake felt a wave of happiness wash over him. "Thank you so much, Professor. I couldn't have done it without your help," he said sincerely. Their bond had grown stronger through their journey together. They had faced challenges, celebrated successes, and shared their cultures. Jake realized that this was not just a teacher-student relationship, it was a true friendship. As the weeks went by, Jake and Professor Zilla continued to work together on their project. They explored deeper topics about emotions, culture, and the connections between their species. Jake found himself looking forward to their sessions more than ever. One day, Professor Zilla suggested they take their research a step further. "Let's organize a cultural exchange event. We can invite students from both our species to share their traditions," she proposed. "That's a great idea," Jake replied, excited. "We can showcase our food, music, and dances." They spent the following weeks planning the event. Jake felt a sense of pride as he collaborated with Professor Zula. They decorated the lab with colorful banners, prepared delicious food, and arranged for music performances. The day of the cultural exchange arrived, and the lab buzzed with energy. Students from both Zoreth and Earth gathered, excited to learn from each other. Jake felt a mix of nerves and excitement as he welcomed everyone. "Welcome, everyone. We are here to celebrate our cultures and learn from one another," Jake said, standing beside Professor Zula. She smiled proudly at him. As the event unfolded, students shared their traditions through stories, food, and performances. Jake demonstrated how to make spaghetti while Professor Zilla showed everyone how to make traditional Zorethian dishes. They danced together, laughing and enjoying each other's company. "Thank you for organizing this, Jake," one student said, a smile on their face. "I've learned so much about your culture." Jake beamed, feeling a sense of accomplishment. This event was a true reflection of their journey together. He had come a long way from feeling lost and alone in the academy. As the day came to a close, Professor Zilla turned to Jake. "You have done an amazing job. This event was a success because of your hard work and dedication," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "Thank you, Professor. I couldn't have done it without you," Jake replied, feeling grateful. Their friendship had blossomed, built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. Jake knew this bond would last, and he felt excited about the future. Together, they had overcome obstacles, learned from each other, and created something beautiful. As they cleaned up after the event, Jake realized that this was just the beginning. He was eager to see what adventures awaited them next, and he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Exam day nerves. The day of the final exam arrived, and Jake felt a mix of excitement and nerves. This was it, the moment he had worked so hard for. He woke up early, his heart racing as he thought about what lay ahead. Today, he would finally show what he had learned with Professor Zila. As Jake prepared for the day, he practiced deep breathing to calm himself. "I can do this," he told himself. "I studied hard, and I have Professor Zila's support." He dressed quickly, grabbed a light breakfast, and headed to the academy. When he arrived, he saw many students in the hallway, some chatting nervously while others were quiet. Jake joined his classmates, trying to hide his own anxiety. "Are you ready for the exam?" Lily asked him, her voice shaking a little. "I hope so," Jake replied, though he could feel butterflies in his stomach. "I studied a lot, but I'm still nervous." "Me too. Let's just do our best," Lily said, offering him a smile. As they entered the classroom, Jake noticed Professor Zila standing at the front, her presence calming. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice steady. "Today, you will take the final exam. Remember, this is a chance to show what you have learned. Trust in yourselves." Jake felt a little better hearing her words. He took a seat and prepared his materials, glancing at his classmates. Some looked focused, while others seemed anxious. He took a deep breath and reminded himself of all the hard work he had put in. The exam began, and Jake picked up his pen, ready to start. The first few questions were straightforward, and he felt confident as he wrote down his answers. But then he came across a question that stumped him. What is the significance of the Festival of Lights in Zorathian culture? Jake's mind went blank for a moment. He could picture the festival, the colorful lanterns, and the joy of celebration, but the details slipped away. Panic began to creep in. What if I can't remember? He thought, feeling the pressure rise. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a second, trying to clear his mind. "I can do this," he whispered to himself. "Focus, Jake." He remembered how Professor Zila had explained the festival's meaning, the joy it brought to families and friends. Slowly, the words came back to him, and he wrote down his answer. As he continued through the exam, Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. He tackled each question, drawing on the knowledge he had gained during his study sessions with Professor Zila. He even smiled at the memory of their mini festival of lights, which had brought him closer to his classmates. After what felt like hours, Jake finally finished the exam. He handed in his paper and stepped outside, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "I did it," he thought, a smile breaking across his face. But just then, Jake overheard a group of students nearby. "I can't believe I forgot the answer to that question. What a disaster," one girl groaned. Jake's heart sank as he heard their words. "What if I messed up too?" he thought, anxiety creeping back in. He turned away from the group, trying to shake off the negative thoughts. As he walked to the lab, he spotted Professor Zila working at her desk. He took a deep breath and approached her. "Professor, I finished the exam, but I'm feeling a bit worried," he admitted, his voice shaking. She looked up, her expression warm and encouraging. "Jake, it's normal to feel nervous after an exam. You've worked hard, and I believe you did well. What matters is that you tried your best," she said, her yellow eyes sparkling with support. "I hope so," Jake replied, feeling a bit reassured. "I struggled with some questions, and I'm worried I didn't do enough." "Remember, every student feels this way. You are not alone in your worries," she said gently. "You must trust yourself. Learning is a journey, and you have grown so much during this time." Feeling comforted by her words, Jake smiled. Thank you, Professor. That means a lot to me. As the day went on, Jake tried to distract himself. He joined some friends in the common area, where they talked and joked around. Lily and a few other classmates shared their thoughts about the exam, and slowly, Jake began to relax. Later that evening, Jake returned to his dorm room. He sat at his desk, feeling exhausted but satisfied. I did my best, and that's all I can do, he told himself. With a sigh of relief, he decided to treat himself to a favorite book. The next day, Professor Zilla called a meeting to discuss the exam results. Jake felt nervous as he entered the lab. His classmates were buzzing with anticipation, and he could sense the energy in the room. Welcome, everyone, Professor Zilla began, her voice strong. I am proud of each of you for your hard work during this course. Today, I will announce the results of your final exam. Jake held his breath, his heart racing. What if I didn't pass? He thought, feeling anxiety bubble inside him. One by one, I will call your names. When I call your name, please come up and receive your results, she continued. As she began to call names, Jake felt his palms sweat. Each student who approached her desk left with a mix of smiles and frowns. He watched closely, hoping for the best. Finally, Professor Zilla called his name. Jake. With a mix of fear and excitement, Jake walked to her desk. How did I do? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Professor Zilla smiled warmly at him. Congratulations, Jake. You passed with excellent marks. You should be very proud of your achievements. Jake's heart soared with joy. Thank you, Professor, he exclaimed, his face lighting up. He felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he realized all his hard work had paid off. As he left the lab, Jake felt grateful. He had overcome his nerves and faced his fears. He knew that no matter what challenges came next, he could rely on his friendship with Professor Zilla and the lessons they had shared. Together, they had created a bond that would last a lifetime. A happy surprise. After the excitement of the exam results, Jake felt a sense of relief and happiness. He had passed with excellent marks, and he was eager to celebrate his achievement. As he walked through the academy, he couldn't help but smile. The sun shone brightly, and the air felt fresh and new. Jake decided to visit Professor Zilla in her lab. He wanted to share his good news with her. As he approached, he noticed the door was slightly open. He knocked gently before stepping inside. Good morning, Professor, Jake called out cheerfully. Professor Zilla looked up from her desk, her expression lighting up. Jake, I'm so glad to see you. Congratulations on your exam results, she said, her voice filled with warmth. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your help, Jake replied, feeling grateful. They chatted for a while, sharing stories about their favorite moments from the exam preparations. Professor Zilla shared how proud she was of Jake's growth and determination. Jake felt inspired by her words. I'm really excited about what comes next, he said. Suddenly, Professor Zilla's face brightened with an idea. Why don't we celebrate your success? We can have a small gathering with some of your friends and classmates, she suggested. Jake's eyes widened in surprise. That sounds amazing. I'd love to celebrate with everyone, he exclaimed. They quickly made plans for the celebration. Professor Zilla suggested they set up the gathering in the common area, where they could decorate, prepare food, and have fun together. Jake felt a rush of excitement as he thought about bringing everyone together. The next day, Jake and Professor Zilla began preparing for the celebration. They decorated the common area with colorful streamers and balloons, creating a festive atmosphere. Jake helped make a big batch of spaghetti, while Professor Zilla prepared a traditional Zorothian dish. The aroma of delicious food filled the air, making Jake's stomach growl. As they worked, Jake couldn't help but feel grateful for the bond they had formed. Professor Zilla had not only been a teacher, but also a friend. They laughed and joked, enjoying each other's company as they cooked. Finally, the time for the celebration arrived. Students began to gather in the common area. chatting and laughing. Jake felt a thrill of joy as he saw his classmates arrive. Lily was among the first, and she beamed at him. "I'm so glad you invited me. This looks amazing," she said, taking in the decorations. "Thank you. I'm excited to celebrate with everyone," Jake replied, feeling the energy in the room. As the gathering continued, more friends arrived, and the atmosphere became lively. Everyone enjoyed the delicious food and shared stories about their exam experiences. Jake felt proud as he watched his classmates connect and have fun. When it was time for dessert, Professor Zilla surprised everyone with a cake. "I made this to celebrate not only Jake's success, but all of your hard work," she announced, smiling brightly. The cake was beautifully decorated, with colorful frosting and a message that read, "Congratulations, scholars." Everyone cheered and clapped, and Jake felt a warm glow of happiness. As they cut the cake, Jake couldn't help but feel thankful. "This is the best celebration ever," he thought, looking around at the smiling faces of his friends and classmates. After everyone enjoyed their cake, Professor Zilla stood up to speak. "I want to say how proud I am of each of you. You have worked hard, faced challenges, and supported one another. This is not just a celebration of passing an exam. It is a celebration of friendship and growth." Jake felt his heart swell with pride as she spoke. He realized how far he had come since he first stepped into the academy. With each challenge he faced, he had grown stronger and more confident, and it was all thanks to the support of his friends and the guidance of Professor Zilla. As the celebration continued, they played games and danced together. Jake joined in, laughing and enjoying the moment. He felt a sense of belonging and happiness that he had never experienced before. As the night went on, Jake noticed Professor Zilla standing at the edge of the group, watching with a smile. He approached her, feeling grateful for her encouragement. "Thank you for everything, Professor. This celebration means a lot to me," he said sincerely. She looked down at him, her yellow eyes shining with kindness. "You deserve it, Jake. You have worked hard and shown great determination. I am proud of you, and I am happy to see you celebrating with your friends," she replied. As the evening came to an end, Jake reflected on the journey he had taken. From feeling nervous and uncertain to celebrating his achievements with friends, he had grown in ways he never thought possible. As everyone began to say their goodbyes, Jake felt a sense of sadness wash over him. "I wish we could celebrate like this every week," he said with a smile. "Maybe we can plan more gatherings in the future," Lily suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I'd love that," Jake replied, feeling hopeful about what lay ahead. As the last of his friends left, Jake turned to Professor Zilla, who was cleaning up. "Thank you for making this all happen, Professor. I couldn't have done any of this without your support," he said sincerely. She smiled at him, her heart full. "You have grown so much, Jake. Remember, this is just the beginning of your journey. I look forward to seeing all the wonderful things you will achieve," she said. Jake felt a wave of gratitude and excitement. He knew that with the support of his friends and the lessons he had learned, he could face any challenge that came his way. And as he left the common area that night, he couldn't help but smile, looking forward to all the adventures that awaited him.